This segment brought to you by Sure Crop, liquid crop nutrition delivered right to your farm.
We're back. Now Duane and ag economist Glynn Tonsor talk about the Tyson plant fire from earlier this year.
Duane Toews joining once again here on Ag AM in Kansas, and an opportunity to catch up with Glynn Tonsor, Ag Economics Department at Kansas State University. Glenn, unfortunately for the beef industry, we saw what a disruption in the processing industry can have an effect on the marketplace, the Holcomb Tyson fire in southwest Kansas. Talk a little bit about some of the dynamics in terms of why things happened price-wise following that event.
Sure. So quick recap, August 9th, there was a fire in that plant, represents 5 to 6% of our nation's capacity to process cattle and about a fourth of the capacity here in the state. So you see that's a big deal. The economist in me says when you have a hit to our processing capacity, two major things happen. One is the cost to process cattle changed. So in order to hit the same volume of production as a packing community, we now lost a facility. So to do that, we're going to alter or push harder the other facilities, and in many ways that's what we did. So you have a fair number of plants that normally would process cows, cold cow plants, that are now handling steers and heifers, so that's a slight repurposing if you like. And then you have a fair number of examples where cattle are hauled different distances and further. And then you've also got pushing some plants more, operating more hours on Saturdays, and we don't do any of those things for free. So collectively what that ends up doing is, in econ speak, is it decreases the derived demand for fed cattle, which really puts downward pressure on fed cattle prices, all else equal, and that's what we observed. So the week after the event, we had 2 limit down days. CME prices were down as much as they can go, both fed cattle and feeder cattle, actually. And then the other side, going the other direction, is, that, again, the cost of producing beef went up. And we had some concerns about, I won't say running out of beef, but the supply chain was a little tight. So cold storage stocks were low going into that. So meat buyers, and beef buyers even more narrowly, had some concerns, particularly the week or two right after the event, that we don't have a lot in the storage system, and we didn't really know exactly how much was lost and how long the plant's going to be down, and that kind of uncertainty. So that leads to buying interest going up for beef. So that same week, right after the event, we had 2 of the largest ever increases in boxed beef prices. So the event decreased demand for fed cattle, and in the short term actually increased the demand for wholesale beef, given the events that played out.
Timing-wise, it was right ahead of Labor Day weekend as far as those buying purchases, which kind of stimulated some of that as well.
Very much so. And the other part, it's a complicated situation and event, and there's a lot of emotions. It's also important to remember, I made the comment that we were low on cold storage stocks, and for several months now, we've actually kept, feedlot weights coming into the plants in check. They're lower than we thought they'd be. Both of those are signals that were quote-unquote current. We weren't stacking back fed cattle weren't stacking up in the feed yard, and they weren't getting heavy on us. That's really good because the market dynamics of this would have been worse. Our ability to absorb, the ability to wait a few more days to market cattle and all those kind of things was there because we were current. For our listeners, that may fall on deaf ears because it was a notable decline in prices. I'm not trying to ignore that. But in many ways, it was sort of as good as it could have been, given where we were at with the total production volume of animals in the system.
What may be one of the big frustrating parts, I anticipate when that plant goes back online is fully operational, we're not necessarily going to see a $10 jump in fed cattle price.
Yeah, and that was, so we're here at Stocker Field Day, and that was one of the things I shared was, first and foremost, when do we think the plant will come back? And our current best guess is January of 2020. Time will tell. And even after it's operating, it might take a while to get the bugs out of the system and so forth. So I'm hoping early 2020 it's fully operating. And yes, that will be supportive of live cattle prices. I mean, we bring it back on. It's the opposite of what we talked about earlier. But I'm not to the tune that I think we're going to add 10% value to cattle. I mean, it'll support, we'll go back to sort of normal processing operations, and that's supportive. But it's important to keep context, and I don't think it's going to be a major boost to fed cattle prices.
Thanks to Glynn Tonsor, Kansas State University Ag Economics Department, joining us on Ag AM in Kansas. Jamie, we'll send it back to you.
Thanks, Duane. Come back after the break for this week's Kansas Farm Bureau update.